Good morning. It's Thursday morning. Hope you had a good time at church last night. My fever was up, so I didn't go out or anything after church last night to visit. Um, got to take care of myself a little bit, but I'm much more rested. I got a program this morning. I'm having a fever this morning, so I wouldn't go. But I got a program at the nursing home, one of the nursing homes here in town this morning, and Dr. Adrian has a funeral to go to, so I'll be over there by myself. Uh, I'll just play a few songs and quote some scripture and pray with them and try to encourage them a little bit, and then I'll be on my way. But this evening, I got time to rest up. That'll be good. That'll be good. We finished chapter 24 yesterday in the Acts of the Apostles. And so we'll begin today in chapter 25 is when Festus, the new governor, takes over from Felix, Paul, and his case before Roman justice. Although we want to question some aspects of Roman justice, because while convicted of nothing and while having had several hearings, Paul was held at Caesarea Philippi as a prisoner with liberty to have visitors and acquaintance and to live a normal life within the walls of his apartments. But he couldn't leave. That's still jail. If you can't leave. In my former life, I've been in a jail that they called a hospital, but it wasn't a hospital. It still had bars on the windows, and you couldn't leave if you wanted to. It's where a judge will send you when they think you've drunk too much and that you're a danger to society. I'm not bragging, it's just public knowledge. Y'all know I was a drunk. But I'm not anymore because Christ delivered me from that. Chapter 25 of the Acts, beginning in verse 1. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea Philippi. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him and desired favor against him that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying in wait in the way to kill him. Now here it is, 2 years and how many days after the incident outside the keep. 2 days in a row where Claudius Lysias had to save Paul from the mob twice, and that he sent Paul to Caesarea under a guard of 470 men to make sure nothing happened to him, to deliver him to Governor Felix at Caesarea Philippi. Now these same Jews, these ruling class Jews, they want to kill him. They're already plotting against Paul. Now they have a good new governor. They try to influence the governor. They tell him every rotten thing they can think of about Paul. They make their case to him in private. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't try to bribe him, but they were certainly whining and dining him. And all they wanted to do was convince him to bring Paul to Jerusalem so that they could kill him along the trail. Remember, it's a 2-day journey. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him and desired favor against him that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying in wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered, He was born at night, but not last night. He didn't just, come into town on a truckload of turkeys from Quero. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea. He knew the history. And that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, he said, which are among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man if there be any wickedness in him. Like, that's where my cord is. I'm not going to drag my man across the country so you can try to kill him again. No, he's going to stay where he is. He's in Roman custody. And if you want to have another trial again, you want to have another go at him, I'm great. You got a new judge now. You can make your case and he can defend himself. But we're not going to try him here without him and without his presence. We're not going to have court here in Jerusalem. We're going to have court at Caesarea, where Paul is. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, he said, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man if there be any wickedness in him. And so he says, y'all got to come with me if you want to do it. Let's see how bad you want this guy. You ready? You want to make a big deal and come to Caesarea Philippi again and have another trial again after 2 years after you could not achieve your goal last time? Well, you can try that, but I'm not going to bring him out on the road so that you can pretend to be bandits and kill him. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down into Caesarea. And the next day, sitting upon the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. This is the next day after he got home to Caesarea. 10 days after he charged the Jews that he was going to do this. Then they went. It takes 2 days. Now he's on the throne in Caesarea. The day after he arrived home. I think it was in Festus's mind, I think it was in his mind to get this thing over with one way or the other and get it off of his plate. He was probably a little aggravated with Felix for leaving Paul there for 2 years to have him deal with. And he's probably thinking, Felix should have taken care of himself. Why winds it up to me? He the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about. Boy, they're eager to get Paul. If they can't kill him, if they can't bushwhack him and waylay him in the road, and if they can't try him in a kangaroo court in Jerusalem, they're going to all gather there in front of the Roman governor and make their case again, which failed the first day they took him, which failed the second day they tried to take him, which failed when they came before Felix. And now, 2 years and some weeks later, they're there to take a chance on failing again. These people are determined to kill Paul. The devil is determined to kill you. You think not? The only reason the devil isn't persuading somebody to kill you today is because it's still illegal in the United States to murder Christians. Soon, very soon, it will be permissible in the United States to kill Christians. Now, I'm not talking about these star-spangled idiots that you see on TV, where they got a cross sticking out the top of their head and a Statue of Liberty coming out their foot. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real Christians. Christians ready to die for the name of Christ. Christians who hazard their necks and lay down their necks for the cause of Christ. Those kind of, and let's just call them Christians, and we won't call the other ones Christians. We'll let God decide what they are. I'm talking about the real Jesus in charge of the real Christians, master of real Christians. If you're a real Christian, the devil wants to kill you. In every other country in the world, he inspires his people to kill us every day. There will come a day when it will not be illegal to kill Christians. As a matter of fact, Christians, real Christians, will be the enemy. You see what happens to them in other parts of the world. They trap them in churches and cut off their heads. They take them out on beaches and cut off their heads. They burn their houses in front of their face and cut off their heads. If it's discovered in Iran that you've been baptized, they cut off your head publicly. If you got baptized in private, they'll behead you in public. Baptism equals beheading, Iran. So you got to hide. I tell you what, I don't think I'll live long enough. I don't think I'll be here long enough. There'll come a time in the United States where there'll be a bounty on people like me. Because we refused to compromise with the world. Now, when there was a time when I was all about the world, baby. You know, I wouldn't have drunk so long if I didn't like it. Seeing is fun. If it wasn't fun, nobody would do it. But it almost destroyed me, and Christ delivered me. And he changed me. He changed me all at once, but I was still pretty stubborn. And I had some trip-ups and mishaps along the way over these last glorious 28 years. But I'm proud to say I haven't made any serious mistakes that I know about, committed any grievous sins that I can recall, although I sin daily in thought or in deed or both. But I've kept my nose clean for over 20 years and haven't caused any great strife among other people. Have not let my anger override my testimony. I am a wicked man. I know I'm capable of any sin. These Jews want Paul dead because Satan wants Paul dead. Nothing against Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. Paul was a Jew. I'm talking about these religious leaders. They didn't know any more. They didn't know anything more about God than they knew about Adam's goat. They weren't no more saved than Charles Manson. Good morning, Pastor Haroon. God bless you. So, always remember, the devil wants you dead. He'll always be after you, and he will send people to make your life miserable. And if God protects you and decides that you're not ready to die yet for him, but he wants you to go on and live till the next day, well, then they will want to punish you, these people the devil controls, which is most of the world. They'll want to control you. They'll want you to compromise. They want you to bow the knee. I like the way Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered Nebuchadnezzar when he told them they had to bow down to the idol. He said, "O king, we are not careful to answer you in this. Our God is well able to deliver us. But even if he does not, we will not bow. Know, O king, that we will not bow. We ain't going to do it. Make up your mind now that you ain't going to bow. Decide today. Don't wait until they've got putting a blindfold on you or putting the noose around your neck. Don't wait for that. Decide today that at no time between now and the time you die that you will bow. I bow the knee to Christ, and there, in the name of God, the list ends. Decide that today. And not only will you die happy, you'll live confidently. And when he was come, Paul brought before Festus. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem, they want to kill him, stood round about and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. Why could they not prove it? Because they were lies. He profaned the temple. He didn't. He brought a Gentile into the temple. He didn't. He told people to abandon the customs of Moses. He didn't. He was a Christian for 30 years. He was the apostle to the Gentiles. Yet he was sitting in the temple under a Nazirite vow waiting for the offering to be made. So how could you show it any way that he was telling Jews to abandon the customs of Moses? He told Gentiles that they didn't have to circumcise their children, and they in no wise owed any fealty to the law of Moses, because they were not Jews. He never told a Jew not to be a Jew, because he was a Jew, and as I've explained over and over again, he never quit being a Jew. Today's episode is brought to you by Coca-Cola. It's the real thing. When he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. It's kind of hard to prove a lie. While he neither, the complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. So here you've got the religious hierarchy, the chief priest and his family, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Herodians, the scribes, the lawyers, the ruling class of the temple, the rich people. You've got them all there railing against Paul. Paul's just standing there. And Festus is just sitting there listening. And he's disturbed, I'm sure, as any Roman judge would be disturbed, that they're making all these accusations against Paul and cannot prove one of them. Verse 8, while he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar have I offended in anything at all. Paul says, after they shut up, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, probably pointing at Festus, and the sign up behind him, the symbol of the Roman Senate, SPQR. Which I used to know what that meant. It's a Latin phrase. It means in the name of the Senate. Of course, there was another hanging on thing. Remember, I told you that in Imperial Rome, where Paul lived, they kept some of the trappings of the Republic, but all the power rested with the emperor. My nose was threatening to bleed on me. If I come a gusher and it gets too weird, we'll just pass. We'll pass the hat here. While Paul answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. I ain't done nothing. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure. Now, I wonder how much money they offered him. But you have to remember he's a Roman. And if he takes a bribe, it can't be in contradiction to a Roman law. I mean, Roman governors and officials were famous for taking bribes. It was common practice. They probably bribed somebody to get their position, maybe in the Senate or in the administration of the emperor, one of the underlings. So if you think maybe Festus was bribed, don't think anything of it. But I think what we have here is that he would not pervert Roman justice. I mean, he might take a gift to hang a criminal or to let them stone somebody that was unimportant, but not this is too big a deal. And it had already made enough noise. There was a written record of it. There were records from the chief captain in Jerusalem who saved Paul's life, Claudius Lysias. There were written records by Felix, the former governor. And how would it look if Festus just turned around and sided with the Jews without any kind of preamble? Now, this is very clever. Watch this. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure. Why was he willing to do the Jews a pleasure? Why? Well, that's the question that's unanswered, but you got to think about it. Why would he be willing to help them out? For political support? For money? For a case of olive oil? I don't know. But he was willing to do the Jews a pleasure whom he had not known 2 weeks before and never laid eyes on them. My feeling is they must have offered him something. Look, you help us and we'll help you. And beyond that, I can only imagine what the details might have been. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? What he's saying is how would you feel about it if we went back to Jerusalem where all your accusers are, and I would be the judge, and it would be at Caesar's judgment seat, the same place where Pilate judged Jesus. It would be in the Roman garrison building, in the courtyard where the pavement that they called what they called it, Gabbatha. In Hebrew. He could have gone, that's what he's saying. I'll still judge you and it'll still be Roman justice. But what he's doing is he's giving the Jews a chance to gather up all the people who were actually there so that they can give a better witness against Paul. Why didn't those people come with the Jews that came to Caesarea? We don't know. Maybe they were dead. Maybe they couldn't find them. Maybe they hadn't time to coach them to get their stories together, to prep them, in other words. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, and this is genius, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat. And he did. He's there at the Roman court, the throne of the Roman proconsul, the throne of the governor. Paul said, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou well knowest. Paul is reprimanding this man. Paul is saying, you're a Roman judge. I'm a Roman citizen. Are you trying to get out of your duty toward me? What if somebody hears about it, Festus? What if somebody hears that you turned a Roman over to the Jews without cause? And he's saying, because I'm a Roman citizen, their court doesn't have any authority over me. I'm here for Roman justice. Then Paul said, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. This was a rebuke to Festus. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. You've heard what they said. And in anything they said, there's no law that I broke according to Rome. Then Paul says, for if I be an offender, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. What Paul is saying is, if you can convict me under Roman law, I'm ready to die. But if there be none of these things whereof they accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar, which was every Roman citizen's right. If you were a Roman citizen and you had a cause, you could get an appointment with the emperor, with Caesar himself. If I be an offender, he's talking to Festus, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. If you can find me guilty under Roman law, kill me. But if there be none of these things whereof they accuse me, no man, not even you, Festus, may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. It's my right as a Roman citizen, and it's your duty as a Roman official to honor my appeal. I appeal unto Caesar. And then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, he wanted to know exactly what the law was on this, answered, hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And that's how Paul got to Rome. But a lot of things will happen to him first. I appeal unto Caesar. And then Festus has to give in unto Caesar, thou shalt go. So whatever he expected to get of the Jews, he didn't get it. I'm going to cut it a little short today because my eyes are wonky and I've got to compose myself for the program at 10. I love all of you. And this is a natural stopping place because the next day will be Paul's defense before Festus and King Agrippa. Today, like I told you, decide ahead of time that you ain't going to bow, that you're not going to compromise, you're not going to give in, that you're not going to say that light is dark and dark is light, that you're not going to say that evil is good and good is evil, that bitter is sweet, sweet is bitter. No, you're not going to do that. Decide today. Don't wait for the situation to come, because there will come a time when you will be faced where you will have to bow. Maybe not literally, but your heart may have to bow, or your mind may have to bow. Decide now that you will not bow, no matter what. God bless you.